Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I want to share I believe it's becoming my favorite chapter in the Bible. Now, I have to say the book of Esther has always been one of my favorites, but Second Kings chapter 4 it's they running neck and neck. I just don't know. They're running neck and neck. Second Kings chapter 4 actually presents two women. The first woman is poor. She's a widow. Her husband, though he was a man of God, apparently had a financial situation or may not have been good with money, and he left her in debt. And as a result of the debt he left her with, she found herself in a position where he owed everyone, and she was now being required to pay back the people who he owed. And they were requiring her to sell her sons into slavery. This poor woman went to the prophet Elisha, and she explained to him that this man of God, who Elisha knew, had left her in this debt, and she was seeking his help. And Elisha sent her forward and just asked her, "What do you have in your home?" And she thought of this little bottle of oil. That was all she felt that she had. And Elisha told her to go and gather as many pots as she could and fill the pots with the oil from this little vial. Now, we have to commend and really think it admirable the faith that this woman exhibited, because anyone thinking in their natural mind would look readily and see that something this small, this little, is not going to fill a huge pot, not even one pot, let alone pots. But in faith, this woman not only went into her own home and started gathering pots and jars and vessels, but she began to go to her friends to borrow, to see what they could give to her. And in obedience, she began to pour the oil into each of the vessels that she had gathered together. And she experienced a miracle as each of the vessels was filled with oil until the last vessel was presented before her. And when she got to the end and filled the last vessel, the oil stopped flowing. With that, she went back to Elisha and let him know that she had been obedient in doing what he told her to do. And she told her to sell the oil, give the money to the men who she owed her, to the people who she was indebted to, and then live off the rest. How much oil had she gathered that she was not only able to pay off her debt, but that she was able to live on what was left over? My goodness gracious, my God, my God. I love this story because of all the miracles that I see in the story. But I got hung up in the story for a season because in my mind, unlike the woman who knew she had oil, I couldn't figure out what my thing was. What do I have that I could use to get me to the place where I want to get to? I learned through this experience that I'm in now, this journey that I'm walking in now, that sometimes when we're so focused on the destination and so focused on the end goal, we miss some valuable and beautiful points on the way to our destination. We can often overlook things of value that are right around us because we're so focused on getting from here to get there. So I got stuck on that woman, and I dealt with her, and I was focused on her. And then there's the second woman, and she was rich, and she was married. And she was so well off that when she met the prophet Elisha, who was traveling in her area, after seeing him come through her neighborhood a few times, she actually went to her husband and she partnered with him, and she made the decision to expand her home, to have a room built as an add-on that Elisha could stay in whenever he was in town. And Elisha was so outdone with her kindness that he had his servant or his assistant Gehazi to go and ask the woman what she needed, because he didn't want to just receive, but he also wanted to let the woman know and show the woman that the Lord had the power to give back. So this woman didn't think she had a need. She told him she was okay. There was nothing that she needed. And it took Elisha's servant Gehazi to stand almost as an intercessor and to verbalize what the woman would not verbalize. The one thing that the woman did not have was a son. And when Elisha spoke to the woman and let the woman know that she would have a son the next year, the woman's reaction, I believe, indicated what was in her heart. This thing that Elisha spoke got to the center of what she needed. She had the money, she had the husband, she had the riches, she had the wealth, she had the resources, but she was lacking. There was one thing that she was missing that money could not buy. And it took God and his love to have someone else verbalize the thing that was so precious that she held so close that she would not verbalize. It's only today that I looked at this chapter and realized that these two women who I've studied are not just in the same book, they're in the very same chapter. The poor woman who had the sons and no husband, who needed money, and the rich woman who had the husband and the resources, but she was seeking a son. The poor woman was so desperate because of the immediate need for her to resolve the situation that she went out and went to Elisha and she sought him out. Her desperation drove her to the place to get the answer that she needed. She didn't wait for Elisha to come visit her neighborhood. She didn't wait for him to come to where she was. She didn't wait for him to stop through or stop by. She had a need and she went to what she believed to be the answer. And then we have the second woman who, because she was surrounded with riches and wealth and resources, she was insulated. She was surrounded by all these things. But there was this one thing that she needed that only God could give. But because she was surrounded, because she was in a place of comfort, because on paper, she looked like she should have been okay, she didn't go get it. But she did use those resources to at least try to bring the representation of what felt like peace and comfort closer to her. What I find interesting about both of these women is that they each had a need. I don't think it's accidental. I believe it's rather intentional that we see the poor woman and the rich woman in the same chapter of 2 Kings, chapter 4. I believe that God is showing us that whether you are at the end of your rope and whether on the outside looking in you have nothing, whether you're beginning again at square one, whether you've had a life that you were doing pretty well and now you're looking at your life trying to figure out how you got here. Circumstances outside of your control might have put you in a situation that you just didn't have any preparation for. The woman's husband died. We don't know what happened, but what we know is that she assumed responsibility or was given responsibility for something, a problem that her husband left behind. Then we have the rich woman who, even though on the outside she had everything that she needed, there was still something missing. You might be the person that everybody goes to for help, and nobody ever asks you what they can do to help you. You may be the person who is everyone's resource. You're the first person that everybody considers when they need something, but the last person that everyone goes to find out if you have a need. But Elisha came through. And because he was the man of God, the prophet, the mouthpiece of God, he let the woman know, I see you. I see you. I see you. I see the pretty clothes, the beautiful house. I thank you for the room. I thank you for the accommodations that you have made. I thank you for all that you have done for me. I see you're quite comfortable on the outside. I remember a quote from years ago. It said, no matter what the armor, the heart is always naked. The woman was surrounded, but Elisha saw her. Because God opened his eyes and allowed him to see her. I don't think that she was any less desperate than the poor woman. I think unfortunately what happened is that she'd been overlooked so long that she convinced herself she had everything she needed. But God doesn't care just about our needs. He actually does want to give us the desires of our heart when we delight ourselves in him. And sometimes that will mean giving you the desire that you've already presented. Sometimes that will mean speaking the desire that you're afraid to speak. And sometimes that will mean placing a desire in you that only he can fill. So when he does it, you'll know it was nobody but him. I have spoken on these women for a few years now. And I'm convinced I'm not even hitting the surface. But I hope this helps you to know today, whether you are in the beginning of your journey and you feel like you're down to nothing, and you have nothing, and you own nothing, and you don't know where to begin, and you don't know where to start, and you don't know what your oil is, and you don't know where your pots are, and you don't know what your resources are. Or if you have everything that everybody told you you needed to be happy and to be successful, but you still feel empty, and you still have a longing. Wherever you find yourself, I believe that God creates a void in our life that is shaped a certain way and sized a certain way and has certain events and circumstances attached to it that only he can fill and satisfy. That's what happened in my life. I realized I had a God-sized void that only he could fill. And it's only in him feeling it that I have experienced any level of satisfaction in any area of my life. Can you relate? Remember, God loves you, and he created you with a purpose.